Alright, hey, what's up everybody? So this is the second video in my new chart plotter upgrade series, and today we're jumping in on the Garmin Boat Switch, which is the digital switching option that they offer that pretty much allows you to get rid of all the physical switches on your console, and everything can be controlled electronically through your chart plotter or smartwatch, a Garmin smartwatch that is, or any of their other communication devices. Basically works over a network. Just to show you, they basically have the boat switch itself right here, which the power and the ground come in, and also the two harnesses that go out. Comes with a network, NEMA network T, a cable, and also the two harnesses here, which I've already been studying. Basically, these are the power outputs and also information inputs and stuff for certain channels. I've already gone through the installation instructions a couple times, just reading through everything. One neat thing about this switch, though, of course everything is controlled digitally from a chart plotter. You can also wire in momentary switches to engage functions through some of the wires in the harness over there. So you could have these little push button momentary switches on your console, say for like, I decided to keep one for my horn. So if I want to blow my horn, I don't have to go through my chart plotter and find horn. There's an actual momentary push button switch I'll have. I just push it and it'll blow the horn, but it actually still engages through the module here. So that is a nice option about this. And also it has the ability to control switching right here on the boat switch itself by cycling through and turning on and off manually any of the channels that are listed here. So that's nice as well. Something I plan to do just in case this malfunctions, which is a concern of mine, even though I haven't had any problems with Garmin electronics really, other than the one trolling motor that I had. I'm going to use basically insulated spade connectors here, a male and female, to connect the appropriate power lead from my boat for all the functions to the actual output of the harness here from the boat switch. That way I can easily disconnect it if for some reason the switch fails. And I'm going to have installed in my boat a breakout distribution block like this, that it'll have a nice cover on it and everything. It'll be pulling power from the main battery, and I'll have some short leads that hang off. I might only do a few that are insulated, and it would basically be set up to where if that switch fails for some reason, I can simply unplug whatever function that I need to work, be it the bilge pump or navigation lights or whatever, from the harness over there very easily, and just plug the function that I need to work into the wiring that's going to be hanging off of this. That way I can feed power to it and run it manually. So this is just my backup that I'm going to do to the actual Garmin system. I've read about it. I haven't read any bad reviews, any function failures or anything like that, but it's electronics, it can happen. So basically, first I've emptied out the console of my boat. I'm going to get in there and cut all the wiring loose. Basically, it's all tied up nice and neat right now, which I'll show you in a minute. All right, folks, I'm here in my console. It's pretty much where I'm going to be living the rest of today. As you see, I've got a lot of wires in here, and this whole switch panel here is getting eliminated today, hopefully. So first thing I'm going to do is cut all the ties loose all the way down the harness. Get everything loose so I can identify the wires basically. A lot of this up here is just the looping connections and ground loops for all the switches to tie together. And there's literally only one or two actual feed wires that go into the harness coming off of this. So I basically have to get all of them loose from the switches and identify all of them and tag them. And I was like, how am I going to do that? And actually I ended up ordering this cheap little label maker off of Amazon. I think it was 20 bucks. It hooks right to my phone, and it prints these little 1/2 inch wide waterproof labels with whatever text I put on them at whatever length I want. So as I identify each wire, I'm going to print a label for it and tag it around the wire. That way I don't lose track of what's what, and just make the whole installation a lot cleaner. But yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing for the next couple hours. isn't really much to see here, so I'm not going to film it, and I'll just kind of show you what I ended up with once I'm done. Hey, good morning folks, Jesse here. It is actually the next day, and I had a very busy day yesterday of working on this boat, and also had some family stuff we had to do. But I'm back at it early this morning, trying to make some headway, because I only have so much time to do all of this. As you see, I have the console pretty much empty. I said I was going to try to get the new switch system in and working with the existing chart plotter first. As I got into it, I realized there were just so many wires in there and cables and stuff. It was really hard to keep track and kind of make sense of everything. So I ended up just pulling it all out, and I'm going to do it this way. It will just be easier to trace everything down and figure out what's going on in there. So that is empty, pretty much ready to be modified for the bigger unit. Pretty much have the components that I'm going to be reusing sitting here, which is the old chart plotter, the VHF radio. Still unsure where I'm going to mount that. The engine trim tabs, and just network cables and stuff. And here is pretty much all the stuff that I took out. The old gauges, the old live well timers, the radio, and the entire switch panel assembly. You see how much is involved with that right there alone. But to show you in here, so around, jump down in my little cave here I've been sitting in for hours now. All right, in my home. As you see, I've got a lot of everything pulled out. It's a lot less stuff in here now. And it still looks pretty intimidating, I'm sure, to some folks, but a lot of this is just the basic main harness now. Of course, all this down here is the trolling stuff. I ain't gotta worry about none of that, but this is pretty much the main harness where it comes in. I've already opened this up and tracked everything down. These, of course, are all the ground cables here. And these wires that I've got pulled out here are all these switching wires that we'll be hooking up to the new boat switch. And I'll tell you, that little label machine that I got was crucial in this, because I was just able to get on my phone real quick and type in the information for each of these labels to label everything. It's going to make it super easy for hooking all of this back up. So yeah, that was a good $20 investment. And other than that, it was just a matter of figuring out the routing of everything and making sure I have all the stuff hooked up that needs to be hooked back up. And it's pretty basic, really. You know, the radio I'm not going to have for now, so all of that's just going to sit idle. And everything else is pretty much just network cables that went up here to my NEMA network. I pulled all of them out of the way just to give me some room in here to work. And just have to pretty much install the switch now and start wiring everything into the actual switch. I did find a couple interesting things, like this here is the main power from the back of the boat where it comes up to feed everything in here, the ground and also the power wire. For some reason or other, they extended it at the factory with this connector right here, which I don't know why they did, because this wire here is plenty long to make it into this connector, but they just had this really weird extension that they added on, and it was just kind of hanging out like this out of the harness. And looking inside of here, this connector is very corroded, so that was a failure on its way to me, basically, which would have killed power to the entire inside of this console here, which would have been really bad to happen out on the water. And also I opened up this connector here, which to me honestly is just another failure point, and it's actually pretty corroded inside of it too. So anyway, I'll be doing away with this and also this extension and this here, and putting all new ends on these cables, you know, to tie power into everything in here. It's good that I'm doing things like this, because I've found future failures already. Like when I did the back of the boat last summer and did the lithium upgrade, I found quite a few connectors that were at the point of failure that I caught before it got to that. In a way, this is good to get in here and go through all these connections every few years, just to make sure that you catch something before it catches you. Today I'm going to get the switch mounted in here, start tying in all the wires. It's just basically hooking wires up, nothing special there. I'll probably get it all done and show you the end product. That's what's up. I got a busy day ahead of me. All right, it's been a couple hours. Just give you guys an update where I'm at with the switch installation. I got the inside of that console cleaned up the rest of the way and ready to go. And I went ahead and got the actual wiring harnesses and stuff out and mapped out everything as far as all the switches. Let me just show you what I got. So pretty much there's two harnesses for this boat switch assembly. There's the X1 here and then the X2 harness, which I have them laid out. And I went ahead and mapped out all these switch locations of what I want them to be. And this switch kind of comes pre-configured, you know, with the nav lights on 1 and 2, the anchor lights, courtesy lights, spreader lights. Then it's got a fuel resistance fuel input, which is what I have as the resistance style on my boat. Number 7 is not used, and then you got manual switch inputs on 8, and then 9. The rest of these is like the front live well, the rear live well, the rear live well recirculating pump, raw water, and the bilge pump. So I have all the switches mapped out, and that's what all of these are here. And I went ahead and put some fully insulated female spade terminals on there, and also put some adhesive lined heat shrink. That way everything seals up good. So all of these are ready to be installed. Now, as far as all the other connections on the harness, these here are just inputs for if you wanted to do a momentary manual switch on the dash, still like a small push button, to be able to turn any of these on without having to go into the chart plotter to do it. So that option is actually still there to be able to add manual switches if you want. Say if I wanted to do one for the bilge pump, you know, which would make sense, just have a small switch on a dash that you just hit it and it turns it on, and you hit it and it turns it off. Of course, you can still do it from the chart plotter as well. And the X2 harness is mainly inputs for resist or voltage based fuel, stuff like that. Dimmable inputs for lights that can be controlled with these. This here, you can add dimmers to those, which a manual dimmer that is. Now you can also do it from the chart plotter as well, but this allows you to, if you wanted a manual switch on the dash like a push button, to dim the lights, like I said, without having to go into the chart plotter to do it. And these here are pretty much just like calibration, manual calibration wires and stuff that you have to ground to do certain things, like programming the fuel sender limits as far as minimum and maximum, you know, for your fuel tanks or water tanks, whatever you have. So honestly, none of this harness here is even going to be used. I went ahead and capped off all of the bare ends of the wires with heat shrink adhesive lined and sealed them up. This will be installed, but it'll pretty much just be zip tied up. None of this will actually even be used, and not much of actually this one is going to be used as well. I'm pretty much just going to be using these wires here, and all of this other stuff is just extra functionality for the future if I want it. Another thing I did want to add is, anytime you're doing work on boats like this, don't buy connectors from Amazon. They're terrible. As far as off brands and stuff, they're like super cheap compared to the name brand, which I have learned the hard way that you need to stick with, like Anchor. They have really good terminals. The difference between these and the ones that you can get from Amazon are just unreal. And I don't even worry about getting the heat shrink ones. I just buy the nylon ones, which actually are more durable as far as not breaking through the liner. And then I just add adhesive lined heat shrink over top of it to seal it up, is the way I do everything. Now this stuff here actually is pretty decent, the stuff you can get from Amazon. This is a pretty cheap kit here. There isn't much difference between the cheap heat shrink and the expensive stuff when it comes to that. This stuff works absolutely fine, but definitely don't skimp on the connectors. There's a world of difference there. All right, y'all, it's been a few hours and we have made quite a bit of progress. Let me get up in here and show you what we got going on. Okay, as you see, I've got the Garmin Boat Switch mounted, and the harness ran and tied into the harness for the boat. And I tell you what, those little labels that that little machine I bought made, this little guy right here, I'll put a link to it in the description. These are waterproof labels, so it definitely helped with this. I actually be using this on quite a few things, honestly. It's in here, it's all hooked up. I cleaned up all the grounds and stuff, and I do have the other harness I still got to put in there and just tie it up similar to that one. And I've gone through all the wiring, got everything figured out and tested. So I have power sitting here ready to be hooked to it, and ground on this side, but I haven't hooked it up yet. And I also have the new power distribution block right there mounted. and basically it'll tie into where the main power ties into this. So this will basically come on when the main switch in the back of the boat comes on, and that's what's going to power on the chart plotters and the NEMA network and everything, since they have to be on for the boat switch to work. So as soon as I turn the back switch on, then I'll be able to turn on all of my electronics, and then I can actually access everything else on the boat. That's what's up. And also, like I said, I'll have my pigtails coming off of this just for backup in case the switch fails. I can just unplug one of these spade terminals, plug right into that, and power whatever I need to get around this thing if it screws up on me. So we got a lot done in the last few hours. Now it's time to start out here and start mocking up the fitment of that monster screen. What I'm basically going to do is go ahead and, of course, get the light and everything out the way, get the template up here, figure out the placement for it where I want it left and right. I decided I'm not going to put the VHF back in there. I'm probably just going to mount it either up inside the console in the very top inside, so if I need it, I just open the console door and I can use it, or I may put it up here in this box. I'm not sure. Haven't decided on that yet. And I'm also not going to have a radio for right now. I'm doing away with the one that I had, and I'm going to put a black box radio, and it basically one that stays in the console and you operate it from the chart plotter. That way it just going to keep this real nice and clean. So basically it'll just be the big chart plotter, it'll be the all-in-one gauge from Suzuki, and maybe a push button somewhere down here, and then just a simple charging port, you know, for accessories. A little nerve-wracking at this point because I'm getting ready to cut a massive hole in this console, but I do have all the stuff with me to fix it and keep it strong. So that's going to be it for this video, though. If you're interested in continuing, just watch the next video. Peace out.